Welcome to the Paranormal Pendle podcast, coming to you from the heart of Pendle Witch Country in the northwest of England. My name is Craig Bryant, author, investigator and collector of stories. Join me as we take a journey into the paranormal, UFO sightings, cryptozoology and big cats. This is the Paranormal Pendle podcast. Hello and welcome to episode 5 of Paranormal Pendle, broadcasting to the Paranormal UK radio network at pauk.com. On this episode, I'm talking to Mick McLaren, member of the BBR group, which is the Being Believed Investigations, and lead investigator of the Winter Hill investigation team. So Mick, thanks very much for joining us. Could you start by telling us a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, well, I started at first working on layer lines, and I got into layer lines. I went to a few conferences just before 2012, and one of these conferences was about layer lines, and it piqued my interest. So I thought, I'll get some books and read about this, and as I was reading about it, I came across a really good book. You probably heard of it yourself, in Mysterious Lancashire by Philip Rickman. And funnily enough, all these ley lines that are in this book are around Winter Hill. And it piqued me interest even more because it was close to home. So I did a lot of research on ley lines, and I would go and visiting places because, as you know, with layer lines, it's more than 5 sites, and they class it as a layer, especially when they're in a straight line. So I was doing this, and I started at a place on Winter Hill called Roundlawn, because it was a place I always wanted to go and visit because I'd heard people talk about it. And it is smack bang in the middle of Anglesart Moor, which is just on the north side of Winter Hill, towards Charlie. And as I got there one day, and it was a really nice day, and I'd gone on my own, and I was sat there, and I was just thinking about, where the other places were, the maps I was looking at were showing me which way the lines would go. So I started following what I thought was the ley lines at the time. I started following one particular one, which led me across to Croston. I didn't know it went further than Croston at first. I thought, it stayed at Croston because they had all these sites. And after Croston, it didn't seem to go anywhere else. And then I decided to start looking on the other side. From Roundlaw to the other side, to the east side, and realised that it was following old ancient sites, stone circles, going that way. And then it stopped at another cross. And I thought, oh, this is interesting. It starts at one cross and ends up at another cross. There's Croston, and then there's what called Pilgrim's Cross on Oakham Moor. In between all that, there's about 7 or 8 different sites. And I started realising that on these sites we were getting all the folklore stories as well, about the white ladies and ghosts, boggits and things like that. As I was looking into this, I've got a bit of an obsession as well with maps. I love looking at old maps and overlaying on the new maps as well. So, like we see where all these old sites are. So as I was doing that, I would realise it. I actually came across a map by Deborah Atwell, who's head of the BBR investigations. Mm-hmm. And I started noticing when I put my map and her map together, my lines seem to be along my lines, seem to be her sightings what she'd come across and put on there, where people had been in touch, and she'd taken their reports and she put it down on this big Google map, which she has. So I got in touch with Debbie, and like I mentioned this, because at first I used to think, like cryptids, like it's not my sort of thing. I was thinking it's a bit way out there. And with what I'd been researching with the ley lines and paranormal things happening, I thought, well, let's go down this avenue and see where it takes me. So I got in touch with Debbie. We had a chat, we had a meet, and it just like stemmed from there. And one day she got in touch with me and said, like, could you do an interview for us? And this is the interview which is up on my YouTube channel, and it's Dave and Adam when they had their experience with being growled at up on Winter Hill. And it was the start of me getting witnesses coming to me as well. So not only was it using Deborah's site and using some of her accounts, I've been getting some of my accounts as well, and now we're sort of like working together with that, and anything I get goes onto this map as well as Debbie's.
Okay, so for people that don't know anything about Winter Hill, could you just sort of describe whereabouts it is, in relation to the northwest of England?
Yeah, well, it's in Lancashire, or part Lancashire, part Greater Manchester. Whereas a lot of people in Greater Manchester don't like the idea of that. So it's sort of borders the boroughs of Chorley, Blackburn and Darwin, and Bolton. So it's sort of like in the middle there. It's on the West Pennine Moors. It's not too far from Manchester. In fact, it's not too far from any main city. You've got Manchester, there's Blackburn, Preston, wherever you are in that part of the world, you can look up and see the mast, the big television mast on top of Winter Hill. Uh-huh. It's quite a big moorland area as well, with a few woods here and there. Quite a lovely place to be up there, because you can actually see over to Pendle Hill, you can see over to Blackpool Tower, and looking behind, you can see Snowdonia, and all the Welsh coastline.
So it's quite elevated, and it's very very windswept. And I mean, what sort of landscape is it?
Well, the landscape, it's some places it's really, really boggy, especially at this time of year. Going up there, you've got to be careful where you're going, because if you stray from the paths that are up there, even the paths this time of year can get very muddy to the point where you're slipping around, or you can fall over. There's been a lot of main rescue attempts up there, because people have gone up there with the lockdown, not knowing what sort of shoes to wear, and they've been like breaking their ankles, and mountain rescue's been going up there and like rescuing them and getting them back to the hospitals. It's boggy as you go higher up, and then as you start coming lower down, you come to like the nice grass areas and fields and going into the wooded areas. But right at the top, it's not advisable to walk around if you're unsure of any wild moorland.
Yeah. So you'd say it's a pretty remote place then?
Yeah, it's 456 meters above sea level, making it 1,498 foot high. So you know it's pretty high. It's not far off, I suppose, from being a mountain.
You've obviously been doing some investigations into some quite weird things that have been happening up on Winter Hill. Why did you decide to start the Winter Hill investigation team, and what sort of investigations have you been carrying out?
The reason I started our small team, what we have at the moment, is because it would get quite too much for me, because I work during the week, and then at weekends it was just doing what I do. But I wanted to do more, because there was a lot more out there. There was a lot more things happening at the time. So we decided, it was me and Debs who got together and decided, it would be good to have BBI members come and helping. So the members I've got helping me at the moment are they've been BBI members for quite a while as well, but they're local to me. So the team I have at the moment, we've got to a point where we've become quite good friends and we're very close, and it's becoming more of a, like going out, enjoying yourself, looking for these things as well, looking for the things we've come across. It's sort of like a social early morning or, late on at night, because we do go up, we've been up at 4:30 in the morning, we've been up there at 12, sometimes 2:30 in the morning. We do go up there late at night when these things are probably happening to see what we can come across.
So can I ask what sort of things you've been investigating and what's sort of prompted your investigations? Have people been contacting you direct with things that have been going on up there?
Yeah. Well, I'll start from when we first started investigating. We, like I said, Deb got in touch with me and asked if I could interview these two fellas, Dave and Adam. And at the time, they were up there looking for rabbits, and they'd gone up one night, and as they got out of the van, they've not got far from the road to the field, and there's like an old stone wall that was partly down, and they went over that, walked through this area onto the field, and they came across a sheep that was, because it was October as well, it was cold and it had been drizzling, so it was pitch dark. They couldn't see in front of them without the torches. Because they'd been going up there rabbiting, they didn't bother with torches. They had them on them, but they didn't have them on. And they bumped into this sheep, looked down and saw that it was a dead sheep. It had been sort of like ripped open. It was still steaming, blood and guts everywhere. And it startled them. And then they heard a growl, not knowing what it was. Davey got his torch out and he's looking around, unsure of what it was. And he said he saw eye shine, like a red eye shine. And it quickly went down. At this point, they were both really, really scared, nervous, didn't know what to do. They had this thing growling at them. They just bumped into this dead sheep, which was a real mess. They both sort of like went down the field, sort of back to back, because Dave's ex-military, and he was like, his military side kicked in. So he's with a torch, and he had his friend at the side of him, and they're looking around, one going one way, one going the other way, making sure, they're all right. And they got to the fence, and the younger of the fellas, he jumped over the fence, whereas Dave went through the gate. And they got onto the road, going back down to the van, and they sort of would be shadowed from the left and to the right as they were walking down. Something was growling on the left, and then the next minute it was on the right, and they were heading down towards the van. And he just kept doing this until they got in the van, and they just drove off. As they drove off, like they made sure they were quite a fair distance from the hill itself, and they started they got the phones out, to try and recognise what this growl was, and everything they put into the growl, like with Google, everything they put in, the growl of a dog, the growl of a cat, like big cat, and Dave messing around says growl of a werewolf. And that's what the noise was when they played it back. So they was under the impression that they bumped into a werewolf up there.
So did they actually see what it was, or did they just see the eyes?
As he was swinging the torch round, he saw something move, a shape move down quickly.
Right.
Where it was on because it was higher up on the hill, It looked taller than what it was. But he did say red eye shine. He caught red eye shine as he was swinging the torch round. But as he went back with the torch quickly to shine it in the direction it was, there was nothing there.
Interesting that you mentioned that when they found the carcass, it was I think you said it was still steaming, which suggests that it was a very, very fresh, recent kill.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's interesting from how they described it is the fact that you said there was a lot of blood and blood and guts, basically. A lot of the sheep and cow mutilation cases that are unexplained, there tends to be very little blood and very little disturbance around the animal. So, for instance, I was speaking to Paul Sinclair for a podcast number 3, and he mentioned finding animal carcasses, deer carcasses, where there was no blood, almost surgical incisions in the animal. Now, that sounds completely the opposite to what these guys found, which would suggest that whatever had done this is something different to what's doing the usual type of animal mutilations. So what happened after they were moving away from the carcass then? Did they manage to get back to the car and just drive off, or...?
They got back to the car and drove off. They went back home, and then that's when I think it was Dave's partner who got in touch with Debbie Axwell, and told her about what had happened, and that's when she'd asked me to go up. Now, it does get stranger, because when I went interviewing them, we went back up there as well, and we went looking round the field, and we came across another one, which was an older death, and this one had the skull embedded in the wall, and a bit of the vertebrae had been placed on the wall, on top of the wall as well, which I thought were quite strange. But I've heard people say, well, people do this, like so the dogs can't get to the bones. But they wouldn't place just like the skull of the carcass on the wall and leave the rest of it there, because the dog would go and start chewing on the rest of it. And then as we went back to the first one, what they come across, bear in mind this is about a week after when I went up looking at these, we found on top of the wall near the first kill, part of the dry stone wall up like a pyramid, and within them there was 3 vertebrae just placed there, which I can't explain why that was done. There's no explanation at all why anyone would do something like that and then place these bones around.
Do you think that they could have been attacked by dogs?
Well, that's another thing I've looked in, because I've been speaking to a witness who has been brought up on a farm, and a few other people about that, but with dog attacks, they go for the ankles, and you'll see bite marks around the ankles or little bits of fur, wool pulled out from the ankles. Now, the wool was everywhere as well. The wool was pulled out. It was scattered all the way around the body. It was about 2 meters around the body with the parts and the bones and everything. It was just totally ripped apart. And a dog really wouldn't do that. They're more worrying the sheep, where they'll go for the legs, and then the sheep usually dies of exhaustion or fright. So, yeah, we sort of like, at that point, I was thinking maybe this could be a big cat attack. So all the photos that I've got, I did send off to, sorry, I can't remember his name now, but I sent off to an expert who runs a Panthora website, who deals in big cat sightings in America and in England. And he said, no, it's not a cat big cat killing. He said he wasn't sure what it was.
What do you think about what they were saying then about the red eyes?
That is strange. Now, going with that, well, I've not come across an animal with red eyes. Eye shine is usually white or yellow, like with cats. But we have had another sighting, or Debs has had a sighting, which is on her map, not far from that area, where someone's been driving home. Well, they've been out for a drive round Rivington area, which isn't too far from, well, it's on the bottom of Winter Hill. And this was about 2:00 at night, and he bit of insomnia, went for a drive with his friend. He was coming out of Rivington village and going towards what would be Chorley. Out the side of his car, just near a garage, he saw something what he explained was about 7 foot tall, had red eyes that were the same size as a person's hands. And he did actually go back to see whether there was any reflectors around there, and nothing at all.
Have there been any other sightings then, or is that the only other one that you know of?
Well, there is one which, another one that's on my YouTube channel, and that's a lady who in 2012 went up there to watch the beacons being lit for the Queen's Jubilee. She'd gone up there with 3 friends. She'd gone up to the top, and what she found suspicious was that this is the one who's been brought up on farms, so she knows her stuff when it comes to sheep and cattle. And she said that they went up to an area which is north of the Winter Hill called Great Hill, and from there you can see all the beacons being lit from Darwin, Rivington Pike, and even over to Pendle Hill. And she said she thought she'd go there because it'd be quieter. She ended up going up there. When she was on her way up there, she met another friend who was going up with a group of friends. So they ended up having a bit of a party and that, and like sort of celebrating this event. And she said, but when they got up there, all the sheep were huddled together. Now, she had a dog with her, which was used to, it was a sheep dog, used to moving the sheep. So she got it to move the sheep away. But they kept coming back and huddling together near near humans, which is unusual because sheep, they tend to run away when we go near them. She said she did this about 2 or 3 times. After a bit, they just left them, and they had a laugh. Some group of friends who they met up there were having a few drinks, but she didn't have a drink with her friends, and they met up with this like older gentleman who had all these camping gear with him. After everything had happened, the fireworks and all that, the beacons being lit, they decided to go down. This being about 11:30, between 11:30 and 12, and stupidly enough, they'd gone up there without torches. So the fellow who had all his camping gear on, they decided to walk down with him. And she only had her flip-flops on as well, which is quite harsh ground up there.
She's not really thought this through, has she?
No, she's not. Anyway, they were walking down, and when they got to an area which is called White Coppice, there's a gorge there, and the lads who've been drinking went down there with one of her friends who she worked with, and she went the other way. So there were 4 of them that gone the other way. There were 3 friends and this gentleman, and she said all of a sudden the dog stopped, and she like walked into the dog and said, "Come on, like what are you doing? Stop being silly." And it had all its echoes up, and they heard a growl. And she was thinking, oh no, like she thought she'd get her dog on the lead because she didn't want it fighting with another stray dog up there. But up there in the middle of nowhere, there won't be any stray dogs or anything like that. So they carried on walking a little bit, and as they were going along, there was it goes down a little bit on the left hand side of this path, and there's a wall. And she said what she thought she saw a cow. Now up there are no cows. They're not. There's sheep up there, but no cows. But what she saw was something that she said about 4 foot. Her first instinct was cow, until it moved, and it moved really quick. Now, the torchlight caught it, so they saw this thing moving, and then it really scared her, to the point where she was like, we need to get going. So this path is about where she was. It's another mile to get to the car park, and she said on the way down, the dogs which were with them, kept stopping in front and looking from left to right on the path, following whatever they couldn't see. This night, I didn't mention this night was a full moon, so it was lit up a bit as well. So they had this torch and a bit of moonlight, but they never saw anything. They were watching the dogs looking from left to right every so often down this path until they got down to the bottom. And I think there were so many meters away from the gate. And she looked round to her friend and said, come on, hurry up. I'm sort of freaked out. We need to get going. And as she turned round and looked, she saw about a football pitch away. She saw something move near a wall, near the wooded area. There's a bit of a plantation down there. And she saw this thing moving, and it started running towards them. Now, she said it moved really quick because she sort of explained that counting to 1 to 5, anything running from one side of a football pitch to the other in that 5 seconds, you don't know what sort of thing it is. Yeah. I can't think of any animal that can run that quick.
No.
And it said it got near them and then sort of slowed down, but she couldn't make out what it was because it was too dark, but it was something big. And it started growling at them, and her instincts were, at one point they took the dogs off the lead. She put the dog on the lead, and they really rushed from there because all 4 of them heard this noise, heard this growling, and they quickly got to the car and drove off. But she said she was that frightened that she actually lost a toenail because she'd only had the flip-flops on because it's at quite harsh ground there.
Yeah.
So that's another sighting of this thing that's been seen in her. And we go over to Tockles, which is not far from Great Hill, which is another wooded area. It's called Ruddlesworth Wood. It goes down into a valley with all this wooded area, and the reservoirs are in there as well. And there's been some bushcrafters who came forward and said that they were there camping, and as they were sitting across from each other, one of them said that his friend's face just drops because what he's seen in background was something about 4 foot tall running along the skylight of the trees. There's a movement so quick, which, frightened them to I think they ended up packing up and taking the stuff home.
So was it running on all 4s then, or was it sort of like crouched down and running? Because I'm wondering whether it was the same creature as the one that the lady saw.
See, I'm not sure because it's sightings we've had. Some of them it's crouched down on all 4s, and then other times it's been stood up. The other sighting is no, there wasn't another sighting. There was a growling of in the 80s. Somebody got in touch with me and said in the 80s his family owned a newspaper shop, and they had a Saturday lad. And he said one Saturday after this lad had finished his rounds, he met up with all his mates outside the shop to go camping up on Rivington in the China Gardens. See you, have a nice time. And he sort of forgot about it. And then he saw him the Saturday after and said, "Oh, how did your camping trip go?" And he said, "Well, we got up there, we set up, we got growled at by something. We don't know what it were, but it were an horrible growl that really frightened us. And these are lads in the 20s at that time. They decided to pack up and just go back home because it frightened them that much. You know, Angles Arc, Winter Hill, Tockles. So whatever it is, it's moving around the area. And we've had quite a lot of sheep kills as well.
Have you had any sheep kills recently then?
The last ones we had were the February. Within February we found 11 all in that state where they'd just been ripped to bits. 7 of them on one field, and then as you go over on the other field, you move over along this field, and there's a little wooded area, and then on the other side of there we found like 4 more. So we are finding them not in one place. We're finding them on other fields as well, which we've named like Kill Field 1, Kill Field 2.
Have you spoken to the farmers?
Now, one of the group has spoken to a farmer who's just turning around and saying, "Oh, it's just a dog. We're used to this. This is just a dog," and that's the only reaction we've had. Apart from that, we've some of them were still there, like within a month with their ears, with the tags still on their ears. Some of them have now been removed, and we've been talking about it a lot on the sites and everything. They've probably gone up and removed them now.
Can I ask you what you think it is, Mick?
Well, I don't really want to say. I don't know what it is, because I've had sightings of cats, big cats. You know.
Have you had sightings of big cats up in that area?
Yeah. Well, I've had 2 sightings of big cats in that area. Okay. One from someone who used to work up there, who got in touch with me and said he were out doing his rounds, and it was just twilight. The sun would, he called it the golden hour because he's a photographer as well. So, you know, he likes that time of night where he can take a few snapshots. And he said he looked over to where he was over on this hill, and he said he saw like an outline of a cat. Well, not a small cat, a big. At first, he thought it was a dog because it was that big. And then he was looking around, he didn't see the owners. And he said, next minute, this thing just, it got up and it stretched like a cat, and it slinked off like a cat. It had a long tail like a cat. And he said, what really made him think it was a cat is, as it was sat there, he looked at the head and it was like flat on the head, like an ordinary domestic cat would be. But he said he knew it weren't domestic because it was too small and too far away. You know, he wouldn't have been able to see it otherwise. He's seen red eye shine while he's been working, which he thought was a fox. But again, a cat wouldn't have red eye shine. There could be many things up there. I've had sightings of phantom dogs, which just recently, one lady said she was coming back from Horwich, going over Belmont and towards Abbey Village, and there's an old farm there, which I think they breed Dobermans, and she was going past there, and they saw a dog at the gate, and as she was getting closer, this dog step came out, and they thought they'd hit it. They got out of the car, they looked round, they couldn't find it anywhere. They looked in the wooded area, couldn't find it anywhere. And this were about this time of year as well. So we've been up recently looking around because it was this time of year. And you can see right into these woods. So anything running off, they would have seen it, definitely would have seen it.
I think you talked about this in one of your videos, didn't you, on your YouTube site?
I interviewed the lady and she talked about what happened.
Yeah. So just going back to these sheep kills then, do you think that there might be an aspect of the paranormal involved, or do you think it is something physical but we don't know what it is that's doing it?
Yeah, I know. I sometimes think, this could be paranormal. And then I think, if it's paranormal, why is it leaving the sheep in the state that they're in? Is it interdimensional? Is it coming through while it's moving from A to B? Does it realize it's moving in dimension and it's just going and getting the food that it would get and then move back? Saying that, I think that because this has all happened since October last year up until February, and at the moment, because I've not been up this week, there's been nothing else like that around. I have had one person coming to me and saying they've been up in a place near Brinskull, which is on the White Coppice area. They found a dead sheep there, but the farmer had come up and removed it straight away. So I don't know what state that was in. So I'm unsure. I do feel sometimes this is paranormal because there's a mixture of everything up there. We're getting all sorts of witnesses coming forward and telling me what they've been through.
Actually, do you have many UFO sightings up there?
Yeah, we've just got 2 this week, actually. One in that same area as a black phantom dog, which is around, I believe, is around the same area as the Map It report that Steve Mera put out, which I don't really know that much about that, but I do know it was around that area. A fella coming back from Kendal, he'd been up there because his brother-in-law was leaving his wife, and they were on the way back, and they were coming back in a van, and it was his father-in-law who was driving. He said he's not a crazy driver, so he was just doing the normal speed down that road. Because around there, with it being where it is, like you get a lot of speeders. So he was going down, and he was passing this house, and he said he looked to the left, and he said he saw loads of lights. He said what he thought was a triangle-shaped craft with loads of lights around it. And he said it looked as though where all the lights were shining, it actually looked as though there were small beings walking around. Now, when I asked him about this, he actually said it's the same as the Rendlesham Forest. Like he'd just seen it recently. And he said when he was watching that was the first thing he thought, it's like, oh, I've seen that. But so he explained that he'd seen this, and his brother-in-law who was with him, he said, "Stop the van! I want to see what this is." And the father wouldn't stop, and he said, and his brother-in-law just said, "Oh, well, no, it's just a pub, isn't it?" Because it was that bright and shining through everything. He actually looked up and thought, "Oh, a pub in the middle of woods," which no, there's none up there. And then further down, there's another one of, this was in 1998. This fellow got in touch with me on Saturday, I think it was. And he said he was fishing at a lodge up there with his 2 lodges just outside of Belmont itself. And it's the 2 little fishing reservoirs owned by the Northwest Water. So they were out there, there were 4 of them fishing. And he used to fish, and where he worked, when he got enough, he'd go down there and give them to some lads down there, because his job is he works through nights sometimes, and he was out there. I think he'd had a couple of days off, and he was out there fishing with his friends. His other friends who were at the factory were sat outside at the exact same time. They were having a cigarette. So he said all of a sudden there was a bright light over their head. And at that time, in the 90s, his first thought is helicopter. But then you didn't really get police helicopters flying around. He said that the bright light, it was just a really, really bright light. It lit up everything like a football stadium. He said it lifted, it just appeared over their heads, lifted up, and just zoomed off. He said it was it zoomed off like the Star Trek, the Enterprise. It saw 1 minute and then it just went poof. over the area, over the mast area. He actually, when they finished fishing and he'd gone back to where he works, taking the fish down, one of the fellas who at that point having the cigarette outside said, like, we've been sat here and we're sure we've seen a UFO. We saw something go up in the sky and then move off. He said, yeah, we were just underneath it, and they just started having a laugh about that.
There have been historically a lot of sightings, haven't there? A lot of UFO sightings up Winter Hill. I mean, do you think that because for people that don't know, there are the television masts on the top of Winter Hill, and in the good old days before we had satellite and cable TV, they were the main sort of boosters, weren't they, for the terrestrial TV channels? So they've been there for many, many years. I mean, I remember them being there when I was a young lad, which is an awful long time ago now. So do you think that they could possibly act as a sort of magnet for this UFO activity? And in fact, do you think that they could act as a magnet for this other unexplained phenomena that you're seeing with, these strange creatures, whatever they are? Do you think that could have something to do with that as well?
Well, yeah, it could do. It could be drawing like some sort of energy around it. It could be causing some sort of energy over there, because we do have the ley lines as well, with the energies running through them, which quite a few cross over these areas, because there's quite a lot of burial mounds around there, old ancient burial mounds, Bronze Age burial mounds, and they all seem to, or my understanding, that they all seem to be along ley lines as well, these sacred burial sites. So it could be a mixture of everything. It could be the land itself being so ancient and so full of spirits that it could have something that's attracting it that way. And with the UFOs, I don't know. Perhaps, I mean, with my understanding, that they do seem to fly along ley lines. Because that's another phenomenon that with UFOs and ley lines, they sort of connect as well.
Yeah,
I think these energy grids.
I discussed this with Paul Sinclair. There's a ley line. In fact, there are two ley lines that they intersect very close to Pendle Hill, and the one that runs from west to east actually crosses the northeast coast where Paul's based. That's just actually north. It's just sort of around the Whitby area. So I'm a great believer that there are UFO. There's a lot more UFO activity along ley lines, and if, as you say, there are ley lines that are crossing Winter Hill, and especially if there's any intersection of ley lines, then I think you're right. That could explain why there is, so much certainly UFO activity. But I'm just really interested in these cryptid sightings and trying to get to the bottom of what they are, because to see something with red eyes like that, I think is really unusual.
Yeah. Well, we've seen it ourselves while we've been up there, or we've seen something what we thought it could have been. We were up there one evening, and Lee, one of the members, he's got some night vision goggles, and he was using them, and we're all up there with these torches that are like 6,000 luminum, so it's like like we light the place up when we're up there. Whatever this was, when we look back at it, we were under the impression that this, whatever it was watching us and it was following us. He was looking with his binoculars, and where everything is reversed, like with the light. He saw what looked like a sheep, because it was just a white thing moving, and it was at the edge of the quarry. So he saw this. He didn't say anything at first, and then he saw an eye. So it looked as though it turned sideways. He moved away to say to us, sort of like, there's something over there, shiny torches over there. And he put them back on, and then he saw two eyes shine. One of the ladies who were with us, she saw the eyes as well. Now, myself, when I shone the torch over her, I saw something move. And it was It was fur, but it was very dark fur, and it was about 1 inch long, this fur. But that was at a quick glance at it, because it just moved to the left. But as Lee were watching it, he could see it bobbing up, watching us, and then back down again, going up, back down again. It did this about 4 times. So Lee rushed over, with us behind, rushing over with our torches, shining on the point of where it was. When we got to the edge, it was nowhere to be seen, and this is a sheer drop of about 20 foot. And it was such a still, quiet night, we would have heard anything moving around. And at that time, there was no sheep around as well. It was just, as they're taking them in for lambing. They're all back up there now. We have noticed that. But at that night, they weren't. So a couple of days after, we went back up again, because it was one of them things, you just can't get over it. We've seen some of it, we don't know what it is. We need to go up and investigate, see if there's any evidence around. We couldn't find any evidence around. We've actually got trail cameras up there at the moment, like to see whether we can get anything that way.
Yeah. Have you picked anything up on the trail cams then?
Just deer at the moment.
Right. Because just going back to what you were saying about sheep, I mean, obviously this time of the year, there's a lot of sheep with lambs in the field. So you would expect that there would actually be, I mean, a sheep's a fairly easy target, I would have thought, for a large carnivore. But lambs more so. And obviously there's a lot of them out in the field. So not that I would wish you to be finding any mutilated lambs or even mutilated sheep, because it's not nice to find either of them. But I'm just wondering whether this time of the year may well be when you see more activity than others.
Well, that's what I was thinking. We might see some more activity, because this time last year we weren't up there looking around, so we don't know from this time of year up to October. I mean, it started on the 25th of October. So, and we from then up to February, that's when we had the most activity up there with finding these sheep. But we've not had anything since. So they've taken the sheep and they've let them back out. And like you say, I mean, we don't know what we're going to go up to when we go up there again towards the weekend.
Yeah, so it's a recent thing, isn't it? It's only been happening over the last 6 months or so. So I wonder why that would be. Do you have any thoughts about that at all?
Well, I don't know anyone who's been doing what we're doing before that. So we don't know whether that has been going on a long time. But saying that, the lady who was up at Great Hill, who had it growling at her, she said her friend has seen some carcasses up there which had been moved straight away. That was before that was before all the interviews, before we started getting up there and investigating.
So right at the beginning of the chat, you mentioned werewolf. Do you think it could be a werewolf? And the reason I asked that is because I know that other people have seen things which they have described them as werewolves. And again, I was talking to Paul about this, and he said that there'd been what he would describe as either Dogman or werewolf sightings up on the East Coast. Do you think it could be a similar phenomena here up on Winter Hill?
I think we could have something like that. I do, yeah. It's a possibility, because the witness who was growled up on Great Hill, when I asked her, what was your impression? The first thing that comes to your mind when this happened to you, what was you thinking? And she said, well, it was like American Werewolf in London. So when people are describing something like that and they're saying things like that, then it's a possibility it could be something like that, a Dogman, a werewolf.
The werewolf of Winter Hill has quite a ring to it.
Yeah, well, yeah, we've termed it the Beast of Winter Hill at the moment.
You're going to be carrying on doing your investigations. You've got a YouTube channel, haven't you? Can you just tell us the name of the YouTube channel and any websites that you might have?
Well, I've got mickmclaren.com. If anyone goes to that, you can go to any other media I have got out there. I've got all the links set up so you can go straight to it. And it's Mick McLaren on my YouTube channel. Simple Mick McLaren.
Well, I have looked at some of your YouTube videos, and they're quite atmospheric. Some of the ones that when you're up there in the early morning. I mean, that whole area reminds me very much of Pendle Hill. It's a very similar sort of terrain and landscape, and it's especially creepy when you've got the fog coming down and it's dark, and you know, you're walking around with torches and stuff, and you're looking out for things. So I really enjoyed your videos. So I can only encourage people to go and have a look at your website and have a look at your YouTube videos, because I think they are really good, really interesting. It's been fascinating talking to you, Mick. It's also been a little bit scary. I think there is obviously, from what you've said, there is obviously something really quite strange going on at Winter Hill, and good luck with any further investigations. And I hope that you get to the bottom of it, whether that be good or bad, depending on what it is you find. As I say, it's been really good talking to you. Thanks very much. I've really enjoyed it. Can I just remind everybody to check out my website, www.craigbryant.co.uk. Paranormal Pendle podcast will return. I've got a very special guest for the next episode. And remember, keep watching the shadows.